what are some of the differences that you have observed between domestic and the international markets? How do you assess the current state of information security in India?
Under the hood, it needs to have all the configurability.
According to you, what are those critical factors for scaling products in these domains?
Number of customers that you acquire year on year, it is more predictable and scales linearly.
And as a leader, you need to make sure that there is good harmony in the teams.
A positive friction is important in the team. When they are onboarding it, if it starts feeling like mountain to climb, you are going to lose them right then and there.
Hello and welcome back to DecodeStories, where we explore the past, discuss the present, and prepare for the future with leaders. In today's episode, we have an accomplished engineering and product leader who has experience of building highly scalable and secure software products and platforms in both B2B and B2C domains. He has brought his expertise to places like Unacademy, Oyo, Akamai, and is currently the Senior Vice President and Head of Engineering at PocketFM. So let's welcome Umesh Bude and dive into his journey.
So how are you feeling today?
Feeling great. I think weekends are always good.
That's great. And I believe this is the first time you're shooting on the camera?
No, I have one memory I was mentioning
Yes.
to you, right? Where I was shooting in front of, it was a brand video. I was shooting in front of, I think, 100 odd people. This feels way more comfortable, yeah. Yeah.
Great, wonderful. So Umesh, first of all, congratulations to you on joining Pocket FM. And how's it going over there?
Yeah, thanks. It's just been a month getting started, but quite exciting space. I'm looking forward to it. It is unique and quite different from what I have done so far. I've not worked in content space, like content platforms in general, and this is quite different even from conventional content platforms, say YouTube or Netflix, which are more video content format. Long form audio content format is new, not just for India, but overall in the globally.
Okay.
So that way it's a very different, unique product. So quite excited.
Okay. So, like you mentioned, it's the audio platform, right?
Yeah.
We can call it. And what are the different kind of verticals or different kind of platforms that you have within Pocket FM?
So let me add little more details, right? What is a long form audio format? If you look at video formats, you have a range of things. You have TikToks of the world. You'll get very short videos and one after other every few seconds. Then you have Netflix, YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, where you are watching maybe 15 minutes, 20 minutes videos. And then you have full movies or TV series on Netflix, Hotstar, etc. But if you look at the audio spectrum, you generally have music, and now podcast is a new thing.
Yes.
But you don't have long form content for passive consumption. If you have a long drive, maybe after an hour or so, you get bored of listening to songs. So Pocket FM solves that problem. So, and when we say long, they're really long. Some of our shows, not some of our, like a lot of our shows run for 10,000 hours. And you'll be surprised, like we have one of very popular shows, Insta Millionaire. And some folks, after completing that, they even send us notes saying, when is the next season coming?
But 10,000 hours?
Yes.
That's very long.
Yep. Because in the video format, it's a foreground content consumption, right? You have to have that isolated time to watch it. So you'll mostly do it on weekends, having those 2 or 3 hours. Or if you're doing binge watching, maybe it's 8 hours, 10 hours. But audio is more in the background while you're working, while you're walking, on your long travels, etc. You can do, and that's why the formats tend to be much longer and they work also very well.
Okay. And how do you create this entire content? Do you have a team in-house which is, let's say, because I was checking the Instagram page as well of Pocket FM, and there have been some videos also, right? So one is the audio content, which is definitely there, but do you do the voice recording yourself? I mean, the company does it, and do you do the shooting also yourself, or how exactly do you take care of it?
Yeah. So main input for the audio content is the story itself, the script itself.
Okay.
That we have all three. Some of that is licensed. We license it for a few years. Some of it is created in-house, and some of it is user-generated. They create it on our platform.
Okay.
Uh, once we have the script or the story, we have voice artists who do the complete recordings. In some cases, we are even using Gen AI for converting the stories to audio stories.
That's nice.
Yeah.
You're already using the Gen AI,
Yes.
making the most of it.
Yeah. In actually text and speech, the Gen AI is quite evolved already. So it's quite obvious that we should be using, and we should be using a lot more. Today, if you see some of the voice, some of the stories that are where we are using Gen AI voice, you will not even be able to differentiate. So it's that good.
It's that good. Wow. And one more thing, Umesh, that we all have seen Pocket FM is doing really well, right? And it's not just doing good in India, but outside also. So, what are some of the differences that you have observed between the domestic and the international markets?
I think that's true with not just Pocket FM, but whatever my earlier stints also say. Oyo also had Oyo has India business and Europe business, Pocket FM, and then some of my earlier SaaS stints. I think one fundamental difference is in India, users are price conscious, cost conscious. So making them pay is really hard problem. Even when they see value, it takes like a strong nudge. They have to feel it valuable enough to make them pay, especially for digital goods. People will be willing to pay for on Amazon and Flipkart because they know at the end of it they're going to get physical good. But will you pay for anything that you are going to consume as a digital product? That is a very, very hard problem in India. I think only exception being, I think in education, people are still a little comfortable doing that, like spending for education, online education, while it's still hard, but relatively easier compared to any other digital good, selling it digital good in India.
So I think it's you're getting the value out of it, and education obviously something which is highly important. I would say most important, right?
Yeah.
And I think you mentioned it very right, correctly, that in India, people are price sensitive because even if we look at all of these OTT platforms, whether it's Amazon, Prime Video, it's Netflix or Hotstar as well, multiple people will be using one login, right? And they are just trying to make the most of it.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, that's great. So, Umesh, if we look at your journey, right, since Oyo, you have been a part of the startup ecosystem, right? And before that, you were majorly working with companies in the B2B product development domain. So, how did this shift happen, and how did you embrace it?
That is interesting. Actually, it was quite conscious decision. So I was with Sun Microsystems, and then I spent 10 years at Akamai.
Yeah.
It's a really long stint. Generally, if you look at in tech industry, 3 to 4 years is.
But regarding Akamai, I would also want to understand what exactly the company does, because we all have heard of it. But even if you do some research, right, I think a lot of people look at it as a IT services company, right? Though you have a lot of these products as well. So what exactly the company does?
Interesting. I think Akamai may be one of the biggest unknown internet company because if you talk to anybody in the tech, they know what Akamai does, and they regard it to be one of the very valuable and complex technology. So Akamai delivers close to 20 to 30% internet traffic. That means every time you spend an hour on internet, there is high likelihood that 10 to 15 minutes of that content or that traffic is delivered by Akamai. So it is that big.
Okay. And how exactly they are doing it?
Yeah, I'll come to that, right? Take example of, say, Geo or Hotstar streaming IPL matches or World Cup matches. The scale is massive. We have millions of users trying to watch those matches concurrently. And that's what Akamai tries to solve. While Geo and Hotstar will stream the actual matches, making sure it works seamlessly for the end users or at that scale is what Akamai does. Same, if you are, say, you want to visit bbc.com for news, that server may be sitting somewhere in UK or somewhere in Europe, but the traffic from when you try to browse from here, Akamai tries to cache that content somewhere nearby server and delivers it right from there, instead of having to do the round trip across the globe.
Okay.
So it helps content companies like, say, I mentioned about Geo or Hotstar or BBC reach, make their content available to millions and billions of users without having to scale their infrastructure.
Okay.
And also make sure end users get faster access to the content. So that is basically content delivery, typical content delivery networks do, and Akamai is pioneer in that.
Okay. So I believe I had seen this term in your profile as well, CDN, the one you just mentioned, content delivery network.
Content delivery network.
Okay. Okay. Got it. Great. So yes, 10 years in Akamai. Please tell us about your journey.
Yeah. So I spent 10 years, and it's a really cool place to work at, right? Because deep technology, amazing work culture, a globally distributed team, and I think I had some of the best working years there. But when I was completing 10 years, that was the thought that stuck, right? If I continue here, I may end up retiring from here. And that's true with a lot of folks at Akamai. I think many of them retire from there.
Okay.
But I didn't want to do that. I thought, enough fire in the belly, I should try something else. So the day I completed 10 years, that was a hard cut for me. Almost, I on this exactly same day I left. I wasn't even clear what I'm going to do next, but I said I had to first move out from here, make myself a little uncomfortable and figure out what next.
Okay.
And that's what, and I felt B2C startup is going to be very exciting, given what we are doing in India, and at least 5-6 years back, it was seeming even more exciting for me because I'd not gotten involved. And that's where I decided I'll get into startups, and that to B2C startups. And I think that has been one of the best decisions I made. I have last 5-6 years have been quite exciting.
Yeah, they have been into B2C domain.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. And after Akamai, you joined Oyo.
Yes.
So how was the experience there? Because if we look at hospitality as an industry, right, people are aware that if I, let's say, want to book a property, I want to book a hotel, I will just simply go to any of these, websites or platforms like MMT, Booking.com or Airbnb, right? I can just simply book it. But when you are in a company like Oyo, so how were you looking at the entire, tech from a perspective that it is going to elevate the business as well?
Yeah, I think a few things what Oyo has done is transformational. By the way, not many people know that Oyo doesn't just operate in India, but in many countries. And I was leading their tech for Europe business.
Okay.
So just to give some insight, in Europe, it's quite common for families to go on these long summer and Christmas vacations, like 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks. And typically they take like a large house where then in the truck they can like whole family and their dogs and pets. Everybody goes and stays in those places. Those typically are called vacation homes.
Yeah.
And that's Oyo through multiple acquisitions is second largest vacation home rental company in Europe.
Okay.
So I was leading tech for that. But just as an insider within Oyo, what Oyo has done in India is also, I think, created a new category, right? If you notice before that, if you wanted to stay in a budget hotel, say 400, 500 rupees, you are pretty sure that you are not going to get clean sheets, clean towels, clean bathrooms, etc. Uyo transformed that part. It just, I think, there are many other platforms. What they do, tech platforms, what they do is provide platform for booking and get discounts, etc. But Uyo also try to enhance the experience itself of actually staying in those places, especially for the budget users.
Budget users. Okay.
So they used to they will make sure the sheets and towels and bathrooms, and there is some basic hygiene or basic things that are maintained in those properties. So that way, I think it is what Oyo has done for the category is amazing. And interestingly, it just doesn't not just help the end user; it also helps the hotel owners. And the way they do that is by increasing their occupancy. Because Oyo has massive distribution. Um, Once a hotel is available on Oyo's platform, if you on an average your occupancy, that is number of nights your hotel is going to be booked. Typically, if it is 30-40% on after coming on Oyo, your occupancy may go up to 70-80% or 90%. So hotel owners end up making more money, and end users tend to get better experience, especially for the budget ranges.
Budget ranges, yes. Because if we look at the Oyos as well, right? And in fact, there also you have a categorization. Like if you look at the Oyo townhouse, right? And then like you were mentioning about these vacation homes in
Yeah.
Europe, right? So I think you would have set up different standards for different kind of hotels or different ranges of hotels,
Yeah,
right?
yeah. Yeah, I think that I'm not sure whether that's unique to Oyo. That's basically budget and whom you are catering to. Even in the generally hotel segments, you have like 2-star, 3-star, 4-star, 5-star. I think now I don't know. I don't follow as closely, but I think Oyo is also getting into luxury hotel segments in India.
Okay. And I think the Oyo also ventured into other spaces like co-living and co-working space also, right? There was a time in between, then that's what I had seen in the market.
Oh yeah. I think when I was there, we used to have I think 6 or 7 business verticals. I'm not sure now what is the case, but there was co-living. There were co-working few brands where their workflow, and there was one more premium brand. I forgot. I think they still operate. There were even cloud kitchen was one segment. Weddings was one more. So there are many. I think they had 6 or 7 business verticals. I think most of them are still there. I'm not sure how big or small they are.
Okay.
But yeah, it was exciting to see so many different verticals. I used to talk to tech leaders from different different verticals. They had unique tech problems in each of those.
Okay.
Like in my Europe business, end users would be extremely conscious of the experience of booking and actual staying. Their operations are very expensive. Like getting your room cleaned or house cleaned, that is very, very expensive. So managing all of that operational costs, etc. So those used to be bigger challenges. Whereas in India, price becomes like end users become extremely price conscious. So if you like what kind of discounts you are getting is the biggest concern of the end user.
Okay. In India, you're
In
saying
India,
that.
yeah.
So are you saying that if in India, the company is giving discount to a user
Yeah.
rather than maybe keeping the standard at a certain level, maybe not exceeding it in terms of cleanliness or hygiene and all. But if they're giving a certain discount to the customer, then you would have more conversions.
Uh, I'm not still sure about the actual physical experience. I think people, end users in India may end up paying more for that. But will they pay more for the superior digital experience?
Okay.
What I mean by that is having very easy or better experience of booking. You create a best possible app and maybe subpar app, and give 20 or 30 rupees discount, there is high likelihood that you will have higher conversion on the subpar digital product experience,
Okay.
than superior digital product experience. And that may not be true with our, say, users in Europe or US. And we had noticed that in multiple times when we were doing A/B experiments in OYO.
Okay. Okay. And one more thing I want to understand, what are some of the unique consumer feedbacks or consumer uh, demands that you have seen during that tenure?
As I'm mentioning, I think whatever discounts is the one of the biggest thing. Also for OYO tries to manage what is called to have the higher occupancy. We have to strike balance between bookings. So typically, if we make 100 bookings, 20 people may not turn up to hotel, right? They may not actually arrive. So what OYO does is make some additional bookings to make sure the occupancies or the rooms are optimally used.
Okay.
But even in some of those cases, if end users don't end up getting room, in some cases, say all of them turn up to the hotel, that can give quite a bad experience to the end users, and it's one of the common problem. How do you strike the balance between making sure the rooms are optimally used, and yet making sure that end users don't get, or the guests don't get subpar experience.
And then after OYO, you started with Unacademy. So
Yeah.
how was your entire experience over there?
Oh wow, that is that I spent quite some time there, 3.5 years, and I keep joking how 3.5 years at Unacademy feels more than a decade in Akamai, because number of ups and downs EduTech went through those during those 3-4 years, and also pace at which startups move versus large organizations. Um, but fundamentally, it was exciting journey, right? Education is one of the most important things for in India. Just take example of what are the biggest things. What are the things Indian households spend their money on, or they'll be comfortable spending their money on. I think education is one of the biggest ticket items of any family, right?
Yeah.
So that way it is, and it is one of the most important thing also. Given even today, I think what 40-50% India lives below poverty. Education is seen as one of the ways for them to come out of it. Or even middle class families which may not do well financially, or even what is seen as success in Indian households. Education plays important role, and that is one of the reason I decided to join an academy, because it was in the education domain, and using technology for education is a new thing. So that way it was quite exciting, and I think even learning journey, what works, what doesn't work in education, was just to give an example. While the physical education is very different, right? There is a classroom, students come and sit in the classroom, teacher starts teaching, and students don't have any option but to listen to teacher.
Yeah.
But on online education, one of the biggest challenges, how do you motivate them? When I say motivate, how do we make sure they attend online classes? And even when they're attending online classes, how do we make sure they are attentive in those classes? It's one of the most difficult product and tech challenge there is in education. And we built a lot of interesting gamifications.
Okay.
Like what are the tools and products that digital games used? We leverage, we build similar tools for education. I think Gaurav refers to them, I think positive addiction tools, like social media and other gaming does, right? Those are negative addictions. Basically, you're wasting, may not, wasting may be a strong word, but you're not using your time for the best possible thing. But if you use similar tools in education, it's helping them.
Can you give us some examples?
Uh, streaks is one example, right? If you are attending class every day, you get a continued streak.
Okay.
And once you achieve streak of say 30 days, 40 days, then you start attaching a lot of importance to it, because if you don't attend class today, your streak is broken. So you don't want to break that kind of a streak. So you want to make sure you are studying every day. We also had a concept of hats. So after watching say 1,000 minutes or 10,000 minutes on our platform, you get a something called hat, which you could dedicate to your educator.
Okay.
So to earn that hat, you need to study enough.
Okay. You need to cover those many minutes.
Yeah, and so you are earning something that you can then. So that works both for motivating the students as well as motivating the educator. It is still scarce resource, right? It's not something you can get as many as you want. You have to spend enough time to earn one, and then you would want to give it to the best teacher. And imagine how teacher feels once they receive something
Once
like
they
that.
receive it,
Yeah. So a lot of those gamifications we experimented with, and they work really, really well.
I think this streaks thing that you spoke about, this is something that I've seen in Snapchat, right?
Yeah.
And people are actually very, very considerate of that. Okay, if I'm making a streak, I've seen my cousins as well. They are maintaining streaks like, from last 600 days or something like that. And literally, I'm like, okay, how do you keep it, on a daily basis?
Yeah,
Like you need to send something to the other person.
Yeah. Imagine same you do something similar for positive thing like education, positive addiction. That's a good thing.
That's a good thing, yes. Umesh, one interesting thing that you just mentioned, that when an online class is happening, right? In person, obviously there can be few tricks that the educator can do to make sure that the students are paying attention to him or her, right? But when things are happening on an online platform, so how do you make sure that they do it? I mean, couple of things like you mentioned, having those streaks and everything, right? But let's say I'm in a class, okay, on an online platform. How do you make sure that I'm actually looking at my, looking at my screen, right? I am not just, swaying here and there. So how do you make sure that?
It is actually frankly one of the most difficult problems. One is just identifying whether somebody is focusing or not. I think that is trivial problem from technology point of view. But how do you nudge or positively help them engage in the class? If it is an educator-led class, even today the biggest lever is how engaging the educator herself or himself is. And if you see some of the most popular educators on the platform, they are very, very engaging.
Okay.
Like if I remember my times, educators try to, or teachers try to, I think just deliver the knowledge, right? Then it was up to individuals to get the best out of it or maximum out of it. But if you see some of these online educators, entertainer, maybe I'm not sure is the right word, but they're amazing at the knowledge they have. but more importantly, how do we deliver and how do we make sure it is extremely engaging? That turns out to be one of the best thing if it is an educator driven thing. And that's true with that was true with Unacademy, because Unacademy is into test prep, which is individuals preparing for exams, either for getting admission into college like JEE, NEET, etc., or getting a job like UPSC and a lot of government exams. Their educators do play a big role even today. But if you're talking about, say, K-12 or school, which I'm not directly worked on any products in that space, but I feel uh, technology can play much bigger role uh, in the personalization bit, which is if you see even today, if you want most effective teaching, 101 teaching works the best, right? One teacher is focusing on one student, but very few can afford that. Because why that works is you are just focusing on that one student, and you are teaching based on that, what is that that student's ability, interest, what works for him or her, and what doesn't work. But that model doesn't work at scale. But we can achieve doing that, and technology works for scale. But so far it hasn't been as personalized as that. And I think with generative AI, etc., I guess that will be possible for the first time, like truly personalized. I think there are two. One is truly personalized and gamified. I think for especially that age, if you are able to achieve those truly personalized and gamified engaging learning experiences, I think that can be truly game changer, especially country like India, where high quality education is still not. I think it's available. Education is available, but high quality education is still not available to everybody.
And I was also reading this use case of Gen AI, like you mentioned, one-on-one tutoring, right? So let's say if I'm on a platform, or maybe with the help of Gen AI, if I get to converse with AI, let's say I'm working on some math assignment, something like that, right? And I can get the answers quickly. Not just quickly, but I would say in real time itself. The system is so smart that it is actually able to help me out, and I'm able to learn, and I'm able to solve those questions as well. I believe that's how we can make a difference, and the potential is something that's very huge in this entire domain, in this entire sector.
Yeah, absolutely. Problem solving, interestingly, we had solved that at Unacademy. So imagine you have a problem in your physics book that you're struggling to solve. You could just take a picture and upload on our platform. Not even upload, just take a picture, and within seconds, you'll get the educator explaining the complete solution.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, yeah, that part we had solved.
So that was in the video format that I will get an answer.
Yeah.
Wow.
So, but it was not that AI was explaining. There are finite number of questions, especially book questions. So what we had was you could take a picture and we would run OCR to identify what that problem is.
You would run what?
OCR, that is basically you extract text from the image.
Okay.
And search that text in our repository of question answers that we have, and then deliver that relevant video to the end user.
And what is the full form of OCR?
I think it's optical character recognition.
Okay.
Yeah, if I'm right, yeah.
Okay. So this is something like a computer vision kind of technology that you're using there? Okay. Quite interesting, I would say that.
Yeah. I think those are some of those problems are already solved in tech, but I think the most interesting for especially K-12 segment or schooling segment would be creating those extremely personalized, engaging and gamified learning journeys. Not just like, I think bits and pieces it is solved, but like truly creating end-to-end seamless journeys.
Okay. And I have also heard this terminology called sentimental analysis. that is something which is used in the, especially in the edtech domain, education tech.
No, I don't know much about it. I miss you can do many of that basically based on the feedback that you are getting. You can figure out how the end users are feeling about new product features or your brand, etc. It could be based on the feedback. It could be based on the chatter that is happening on internet about your brand or product, etc. But in education, at least we didn't do much in that regard. Obviously, we used to have good feedback collection mechanism of whether students are liking or not, and they were vocal about if they like or not, don't like something. And based on that, we took corrective steps or improvements that we needed to do. Yeah, but I think there are other ways of doing it also.
Okay. And Umesh, since we are talking about education tech, lately there have been mixed views around this entire industry also,
Yeah.
right? And you have spent some time there. So I would want to ask you that what are your thoughts on this? Where exactly this industry is heading to?
If I look at obviously when you look at you see so many negative news, and interestingly before that, if you see during COVID there was so much positive news.
Yes.
Like edutech is going to be like biggest sector, biggest segment, and now it seems like edutech is doomed per se. I think reality is somewhere in between. I strongly believe edutech is here to stay. If you see, even today, uh, education brands, offline education brands are quite strong. And digitization and moving to online as a primary source or a supplementary source in segments is bound to happen. It's already happening. Uh, if you just look at the edutech through the lens of news articles, it seems like it is doomed, but I don't think it is doomed. I think what is happening is, I would say, in line with overall startup ecosystem. There was all the startups that went through like hyper growth during COVID time. Um, they have to course correct. Some of them have been able to course correct, and some of them haven't been able to. Uh, but once that, I think we hit the equilibrium, or once that correction happens, I think thereon it will grow like any other business. And I think that has happened to almost everything. If you look at e-commerce, there was a boom, and then there was a talk about, no, it's not viable, it won't survive. Same thing about Zomatos and Swiggies of the world. But if you have product and technology that fundamentally solves some of the core problems, they will stay. Like which brands, whoever will do good job of it, I think they are the ones who will. But I don't think edutech overall, as it was never as as good as it was showcased during COVID time, but it is surely not as bad as what it looks like right now, looking at the news articles.
Yeah, because you get to hear multiple things, and then sometimes you're also not you're also not sure like how it is going to pan out in the future. So I think that's where a lot of these uh, you know movements or turbulence that happens in the system.
Yeah, if you look at it, even today, right? Even um, education organizations which are strong in the physical space or in-person teaching, even they are moving to digitization.
Yeah.
Right, that itself is sign that uh, um, it is going to be combination. There are going to be areas where um, in-person or physical education in a classroom will continue to be there. And then there are areas where convenience, on-demand access, all those will matter more. And then some areas it is going to be hybrid, right? You learn most of your content online, but you need those windows where you need to talk to in person for motivation, guidance, and things like those. So I guess it will end up being combination based on the segments. Like to give an example, within Unacademy also, we had UG categories and PG categories.
Okay.
UG categories are individuals like exams like JEE, NEET, etc., where there was more pull towards studying in person in classroom. Whereas if you look at the PG exams, individuals studying for NEET PG or GATE, CAT, those kind of exams, these are individuals who have already completed their graduation. Some of them are working.
Yeah.
So for them, attending physical classes is not possible, or uh, getting access to really good quality education may not be possible. For those, online education is the default mode. And you'll find those spectrums and those categorization in almost every area.
Okay. And Umesh, you were also, you have been managing tech and product teams, right? And if you look at it, they both go hand in hand, right?
Yeah.
But there is a different skill set which is required for both of these teams. And as a leader, you need to make sure that there is good harmony in the teams, right? People are working together, they are creating synergies, and there are lesser conflicts, right? So, what's your approach to this?
That's an interesting question. I guess if you look at those teams as independent teams based on the skill sets, then I think those kind of conflicts tend to arise if you start looking them in silos.
Okay.
But if you start putting end user or the customer first, what is the problem that we are trying to solve through this product or tech for our end users or customer, then they become, both of them become enablers, right? They bring different skills and values to achieve the goal. Then there is fundamental harmony. And I think then smaller conflicts are okay to have. Rather, a positive friction is important in the team, so that best possible product or technology is built. But if you don't have that, where it gets unified, or what is our end goal, if you if you don't see that picture, then that conflict becomes unresolvable, because you're looking at the problem, or looking at what you're trying to solve from completely different lens. But if you keep end user or the customer first, I think some of them are automatically get resolved, and some you would want to maintain as a positive friction.
And any advice for those leaders who are maintaining or who have just started managing both of these teams together?
I think many do.
Yeah.
Most of the organizations do have roles like CTPO, or what conventionally was called CTO, now it's become CTO. I guess if fundamentally they come from either product background or tech background, and I think based on which background you're coming from, learning other area is extremely important. I come from tech background, so for me it was important to understand uh, how product is built, how to identify end user needs, how to build product iteratively, build best possible experiences, and UX, etc. So same way, if somebody is coming from tech product background, having enough understanding of technology is important. Um, that is the first part, and second part is putting end user needs or the customer needs before everything else.
Okay.
That does help removing a lot of clutter. If most of the discussions, if we can bring lens of, but does it solve the end user need or does it solve the customer need? More often than not, you're going to get the solution or the right answer. And I think third part, and that's not related to, I think, product or tech, but in general in this industry, I feel is continuous learning. Um, this industry moves very, very fast, and if you don't keep yourself up to date, not just up to date but staying ahead, you can become out, like, from being star performer or somebody whom everybody looks up to irrelevant. It can take just 5 years. So for me, simple thing is, your work week may be 40 hours, but you have to have that at least 5 hours kept aside to understand what's happening, reading new stuff, etc.
Okay.
That's extremely important. And having at least one skill that's very core and you understand in depth is also extremely valuable. It could be a back end coding, front end coding, or in-depth understanding of data engineering, or in-depth understanding of infrastructure. At least one skill where you have like amazing depth, because leaders tend to develop a lot of breadth because that's part of the job. But I feel it's equally important to have at least one or two areas where you have absolute depth,
Depth as well.
to stay relevant in the industry.
And how do you keep yourself updated? Now, a couple of things are, let's say, there is on the job learning. That is definitely happening,
Yeah,
right? But being a leader, right? How are you keeping yourself updated? You would be reading a lot of these articles, maybe a lot of the stuff, right? But do you also think that having a mentor can also boost your learning? So just trying to understand your thoughts.
I think you are absolutely right. One is just, I'm still slightly a little old school because amount of time we have to spend in front of screen. I still like to read books. Whatever topic I can get book of, I would prefer that. But some content you keep reading online. And as I mentioned earlier, right? I think it is not that difficult to find what content to read. If you ask most of the people, they know what they need to learn or study. It's question about whether you are doing it or not.
Yes.
That bringing that discipline is more important than the what part. And the second part, yes, it's important to have mentor, but I have also and I do have few whom I call and connect to once in a while to understand. But even more important is to have that circle where you are discussing this on regular basis. And I have found that quite valuable and useful.
One more question around the having the mentor, right? I want to understand, let's say if someone is in a particular industry, right? For example, you are currently in the content industry, right? And broadly, if I look at it, it's a B2C, right? But you were earlier in B2B as well. So is it important to having a mentor from the same industry? Does it make any difference? Or it's just good to have someone who comes with a lot of experience who can share their learnings with you?
It's interesting, Rubinder. I actually, in early part of the career, right, I used to think mentor is somebody like gone through the exact journey, maybe one or two steps ahead of you in their career growth. So they have seen exactly how to do those next set of things, right, and putting current problems in perspective or in context. But as you grow, I think it's less to do with the expertise that they bring in.
Okay.
It is more about somebody whom you can have very discussion, very comfortable having discussion about some of these topics, and also being vulnerable, right? Because when you do that, I think you learn a lot about yourself and what your strengths and weaknesses and things like that. And through some of those discussions, you will come to know what you need to do next. not necessarily that person is going to tell you, okay, do, oh Umesh, if you have this challenge, do 1, 2, 3, right? Just that and the great mentors also are capable of doing that. They not necessarily have answer, or more often than not, even if they have answer, they don't give the answer. It's just about, through that conversation, can you figure out a best possible way. So for that, I think it's less to do with, have they gone through the same journey, do they come from exact same domain or not. They do add few additional benefits if you can get that. But I think more important is, does your mentor understand how you think? What are your strengths? What areas you generally have difficulty in, etc. And second is, you need to look up, you need to be extremely comfortable having those conversations quite openly. Because if I have, when I look at some of the people I mentor, one of the biggest challenge is they're they come out with like fixed question. I have these 3 questions and I want answer from you, right? They're not open. They're not even willing to. If I ask them questions, they're not willing to even expose their weaknesses. Uh, yeah, so I think that kind of a mentor-mentee relationship, I don't think works very very well. Uh, yeah, I think that's where the difference between coaching and mentoring come. Coach is somebody who will tell you, okay, do these 1, 2, 3 things. And tech industry, I don't think coaching helps as much, because uh, pro- if this is the problem, what should be the solution? You will get that online.
Yeah.
But how do you deal with that kind of a problem? I think that mentor can help you.
So, Umesh, let's talk about B2B and B2C domains. They
Yeah.
both vary a lot, have different kind of problem statements, different scaling issues as well, right? So, according to you, what are those critical factors for scaling products in these domains?
Yeah. So, Rubinder, there are many differences in B2B,
Okay.
B2C, and these are my observations after working for around 15 years in B2B, and then last 5, 6 years in B2C domains. Finding product market fit in B2B is straightforward,
Okay.
because you have a product, ask businesses what their needs are, have hypothesis, you build a POC, and if you are having paying customers and they get retained, that means you have basically found a right product. B2C, that stage is very very difficult.
Okay.
You can build product, you can acquire some users through marketing. If they like, they'll continue to stay on your platform. But whether it will grow, whether it is a PMF, product market fit or not, all that is very difficult to find, or it is trickier than B2B
Okay.
space. Uh, B2B also has another advantage, which is your customers will precisely tell you what they want. And if you are able to listen to them well and uh, provide them with what they're seeking, more often than not, you're going to do well. Uh, B2C, that's not as simple as that, right? Lot of products are built out of intuition. Some end users like it, some others may not like it. You may not even able to figure out. You may get like first million odd users, but growing from there may be tricky, etc. So as an entrepreneur, I feel B2B is a slightly easier market to crack than B2C.
Okay.
But if you crack B2C, the advantage is the scaling and the growth is disproportionate.
Yeah.
In B2B, the growth is still like year on year, 20-25% if you keep growing, and it compounds over the time. Whereas B2C, if you crack right product and right growth, you can grow 10x in a year's time. It's so those are fundamental differences. From tech leader point of view, uh, B2B products tend to be, at least at scale, tend to be a lot more complicated.
Okay.
Because each customer, especially large customers, have unique needs, a lot of customization, lot of configuration. isolating each customer's data, sandboxing, all of those are different kind of challenges. On B2C side, tech challenges are mostly to do with scale, because number of end users are going to be huge, and even scaling happens disproportionately. B2B scale happens over time, whereas B2C it can spike suddenly.
Yeah.
So on the B2B side, the problems are of more often than not are complexity, but B2C side, the problems are more of scale. If your business does well, obviously.
Okay. And one thing you mentioned about the B2B products is that customizations.
Yeah.
Right. So let's say if I have a B2B product in place, so do I need to keep the product open for such kind of optimizations? Let's say if I, for example, if I've grown from 10 clients to having 100 clients, right?
Yeah.
There will be a time when the product might not be able to cater to all the customizations that each and every client is asking for.
Obviously, you'll have to take those calls, but more often than not, what I've noticed is you have to continue to customize. You can't say it is a mature product now. You figure out. Rather, most mature products are not the ones. If you take not my favorite, but some of the most successful B2B products like Salesforce, etc. They literally give you unlimited customization.
Okay.
So it is never about, oh, now our product is mature. It is because we have already figured out needs for these 1,000 odd customers, but it is more like, oh, it can be customizable to every last detail. That irrespective of whichever customer is coming to the platform, you get your needs fulfilled. And obviously it comes with all, like, product ends up becoming more complicated, difficult to maintain, etc. But more B2B, or most that I have seen, most B2B products, organization make the choice of um, going to extreme level of customization at the cost of even making the product complicated. There are very few which are what we call opinionated B2B products, which would say, okay, this is the only way. Like, it's interesting case of, say, in the developer tooling. So we have Jira, which takes like conventional B2B approach, which is like you can customize anything and everything, and hence the product becomes more complicated, but it fulfills all your needs. Then the new age products are coming, like Linear and some of the other developer productivity tools, which are opinionated. Oh, you can only do these 3 things, but you can do them well.
Okay.
But I think that's very, very small segment. Most of the B2B tend to become like extreme configuration, configurability, to fulfill every customization need that customer may have. And it makes sense also, right? Why would organization want to change how it works based on the product or service they are planning to use? They would want to, more often than not, they would say, this is how we operate, or these are our needs. Now, if you want us to use your tool, you help us configure to those needs. Whereas B2C, you can't do that.
Yeah.
Because simplicity of the product is of utmost importance. Moment the product becomes even slightly complicated, you're going to lose users, and hence those decisions become a lot more interesting. Like, what kind of product you want to build, what kind of features you want to build, whether adding more features is always good thing or not, or giving more options is a good option, a good thing or not. And if you see many products, or even take our phones, I think almost 90+% people will use the exact default setting that your phone had, even though it has got so much of customization that you could do. Maybe you will change very basic things like your whatever, your home screen or things like that.
Yeah.
Beyond that, you will just keep it as it is. So that's a major difference between B2B, the configuration, customizability versus simplicity and ease of use plays a big role in B2C.
In B2C.
Yeah.
And I would want to go back to the configurability part that you just
Correct.
mentioned in B2B. So let's say whenever a company starts, right, they would start with a particular tech stack that they would be working on.
Correct.
They would start creating that product on those tech stacks, right? Now, with time, they also need to diversify a bit, right? So when we talk about the configurability part in a B2B kind of setup, where the system has to, let's say, configure with 100 different organizations, they would be having their internal ecosystem of tech. There will be different tech stacks that all of these companies would be using. So how, I mean, it is important, but how do you make sure that your current product is also on a tech stack like that? Or maybe it is, how do you make sure that the configurability is so high that it is getting configured with all of these different organizations easily?
Yeah, so that's where if you want to build a B2B product, you have to take a platform approach.
Okay.
So you don't build the whole product as one single product. You look at each of its layer as a platform in itself.
Okay.
Your database itself is a data layer.
Okay.
On top of that, whatever services you are offering, your backend services, you make all of those APIs and microservices. And each of those behavior of each of those could be fundamentally, as you build ground up, you build in such a way that everything changes based on the configuration per customer. And that approach you will have to take ground up while building. If you are getting into B2B space, there is no alternative. You will have to do it that way. Whereas on the B2C side, you could be extremely opinionated, which is, I want to do these three things and three things really, really well. Take example of Twitter. It said you can only publish message with limited number of characters.
Yeah.
That's a strong opinion, right? Or Snapchat, it would say like your messages would stay or for a only particular duration. That seems limiting, but that simplicity of those kind of products is what end users like. Exactly opposite is true in B2B, which is you think they would want customization and configurability of every aspect based on the organization need. And organizations are way more complex than individual needs, right? So we'll have to acknowledge that need and build the product ground up that way. And third is, it's true with both B2C, B2B, which is having great defaults.
What do you mean by that?
Great default settings.
Okay.
That is quite may not have been thought well in most of the places, but that's extremely important in both B2B and B2C, because most of the even in organizations, they would want to get started with the default product. And that has to be good enough. Only then they would want to do more configurations. Let's take example of at Akamai. If you are using Akamai's default setting for your website, they should see the improvement in performance or end user experience with the default setting itself. If that happens, they will be interested fine tuning it further, configuring it further for improving the experience, make it even better. But if your default setting is the end users are not getting great experience, they may move away from product altogether.
Okay.
Yeah. So even though you want to have extreme configurability, but having great defaults is equally important.
Okay. Okay. So, so we are saying that having these great default settings help in customer acquisition and customer stickiness also.
Yeah, retention, both both acquiring and retaining, right? If your product seems under the hood, it needs to have all the configurability, but when they are onboarding it, if it starts feeling like mountain to climb, you are going to lose them right then and there. Instead, if you give the impression that it's, oh, you just configure, like you integrate and you are ready to go, it seems like much easier thing. And then if they see value and then they will, oh, but I need this also, then you can configure that. Oh, but I want to customize it for this, my organization need, then you are able to do that.
Okay.
And then you have both, you have solved acquisition as well as retention of the customers.
Okay. Okay. And in these B2B products, if we talk about the scale, right? B2C, you definitely have the end, like, the customers like us, we are the we are the end consumers over there, right? So scalability has to be there.
Correct.
But if you talk about, some of the products, which are B2B products, but, because they are B2B2C in nature, the end consumers, let's say for an HR tech kind of platform, right? Though a company is using the product, but the end consumers happen to be the employees.
Yeah.
So scalability, I think, comes from there also.
Yeah, absolutely right. When I say limited scalability in B2B, I meant it is more predictable and linearly, it scales linearly.
Okay.
Number of customers that you acquire year on year, you know how many you are going to acquire and things like that. Whereas B2C, you could have, like, if you find a product market fit and you figure out the growth engine, you can go from 1 million user to 100 million users in no time. And that then tech doesn't get as much time to help that scale journey, and you need to be ahead of the curve. Whereas B2B, that when I said reduce scale, I'm like, there are massive platforms with millions of end users, more than some of the B2C products in B2B space also. But if you see how that happened year on year. So more predictable, I would say, rather than less scale. But you also brought interesting point about end user needs, right, in B2B products. And that's a very interesting thing we noticed at Akamai also while building B2B products. Because again, there are going to be end users, and their behaviors and expectations are also changing. Like if you end up using, say, HRMS software in your organization, more often than not, or finance software, if you see, most of the employees hate it in most of the organizations. Because what has happened is B2C products focus so much on the end user experience, and that expectation, end users now are having that expectation with those products as well. So I think on the B2B side also, products that may end up winning are the ones who start looking at their products like how B2C products look at experience.
Okay.
The expectations are they are moving, right. Like as I mentioned, most of the employees hate the softwares that their organizations use just because the experience bit. Because you use WhatsApp and Instagram and etc. It seems so easy, so intuitive. You can spend a whole day on it.
Yeah.
Whereas your HR tool or finance tool or DevOps tools may or may not be that easy. But now it is changing. But I guess it'll keep becoming more and more important. Just to give an example, even at Akamai, when we were building marketplace, which is to help customer learn about Akamai products, try them and buy them. One of the things that we noticed is even though these are enterprises, their expectations are it should be as easy as
a B2C product.
B2C, like Amazon kind of a product.
Okay.
Why can't I just swipe credit card and add product and try it, right? So the expectations are now changing from B2B products also.
Okay. And one more thing, so this is something that we have also spoken about it in one of the previous podcasts as well. When we are looking at a B2C setup, because the companies will always be targeting scale. So when a company is in the early stages, right, what kind of approach they should take, keeping in mind the scale? So where I'm coming from is that if I'm only thinking that, okay, there is going to be a huge scale, and like you also mentioned, a lot of these things are B2C is generally, I would say B2C is generally, um, comes from a lot of these hypotheses, your intuitions,
Yeah.
right? So how should a company which is in the early stage go about starting their product, building their product, also keeping the future scale in mind?
Obviously, it's my opinion, but based on the what I have noticed works, I guess you shouldn't even worry about future scale when you're trying to figure out product market fit. Uh, your focus should purely be in a rate at which you can uh, how fast you can go to market and validate
Okay.
whether something works or not,
Okay.
or number of experiments that you can run to, because your first hypothesis always is going to be wrong, or if you're lucky, maybe partially right. What matters is number of pivots you can take, number of changes you can make in the original hypothesis or original product that you are thinking of. And for you to be able to do that, you should have to focus a lot on agility and time to market, and how quickly you can iterate over product. Like just to give an example, if your iteration cycle is say 1 week for an agile startup, agile product, and another product, your iteration cycle is 1 month, and say on an average it is going to take 10 pivots to find a right fit. The first one is not efficient in they're not accurate in their hypothesis, but they will still figure that out over, even with few wrong pivots, they are going to have much higher likelihood of succeeding than the second one, even with stronger hypothesis.
Okay.
So you should obsess over speed and agility and how quickly you can iterate over your product than getting it right or worrying so much about future scale, etc. Those are good problems to have, which is once you find the product market fit and you also find growth engine, uh, then you can think, oh, now we have all this, now let's get ready for scaling. Once you have figured those out,
Okay.
and then you can say, now instead of scaling 1 to 10, let's scale 1 to 100 directly. But I think first initial phases, you shouldn't worry so much about scale.
Okay. And Umesh, you just mentioned agile product.
Yeah.
Right? And I have seen this agile and scrum. These are the two terms which I think go hand in hand.
Yeah,
I have
yeah.
seen them in your profile as well, in other places where people have used them together. So can you please explain us what exactly scrum and agile is?
See, one is the jargon part, right? But the fundamentally what I was mentioning, how quickly you want to move as an organization, and that's what you need to focus on. And fundamentally, that is a DNA or mindset organization needs to have.
Okay.
More than the process part. Process parts just help you, enable you doing that effectively. But you'll find that even the largest of the organizations, say IBMs of the world or Oracles of the world, they also would be using agile processes like Scrum, Kanban, etc.
Okay.
But they are nowhere as agile. So having that agility is first, that mindset organization need to cultivate. And also there are fundamental reasons why some organizations lose that agility. One is fear of failure. Second is scale, also cost of failure.
Okay.
Obviously, some of the large organizations, the cost of failure is very high, so you don't want to do that. But you should create enough safety nets. Like I think Mark Zuckerberg's famous thing, right? If you're not breaking things, you are not moving fast enough. That is not to mean break things, but don't be afraid to break things. Like the pace is more important than getting it right. So that's I wanted to give the context first, like why agile is first, its culture, DNA of the organization than the process part. Then there are many processes like Scrum, Kanban, etc., which help you build product more in an iterative way than thinking building one large product correctly. And just to give some historical context, right? If we see product building in non-technology or non-software products, there fundamentally there is no scope of things going wrong. So each stage you have to plan perfectly. Say now we are building a metro line on Outer Ring Road, right? Architect there can't think, oh, let me raise this pillar, and if it doesn't work, I'll move a little bit, right? So they have to plan everything perfectly. How many pillars, what distance, what needs to be height of it, what kind of gauge of metal that you are going to use, composition of the pillar, everything has to be decided, and that has to be accurate. There you can't have any mistake there, right? And then you, after lot of planning, figuring out, everything happens, and then you go and execute once, and that's it. Same with car manufacturing, physical architecture, any of those. And same mindset was there even while building software earlier. So you have to plan a lot. You have to get everything right, and then you build software and things like that. But if you see, fundamentally, software is not that way. You can keep iterating, keep making changes to it. And that's why the mindset has to be like, okay, you build the first version, keep iterating, keep improving. And that's where the agility bit is way more important in digital product development than anywhere else.
Okay. And if I talk about the data, especially last 5 years, you have been into B2C domain, right? And there's a lot of data that the companies are also capturing, right? So how does data help in decision making?
Yeah. So Rubinder, everything is like data, right? I've seen even the mindset change. When I used to in my earlier years, you would have this, our customers have asked for this, or this is the strong hypothesis, we need to build this feature, and this is the reason why we need to build. And you build that feature, spend a lot of effort and bandwidth, etc. And then you look at whether customers are liking it or not. But if you see now, especially in the B2C domain, I'm sure some part of that is happening in the B2B also. Nothing is like a product feature that we want to launch or build. Apple still does it that way, but if you see digital product especially, it's mostly you have a hypothesis and you build experiment around it. And you roll that experiment. Say, I was giving example of streaks to help engagement or retention of the users. You run that as an experiment. You roll it out as to 50% users, 50% users. You don't roll it out, and you see whether the users who don't have that feature versus who have that feature, what is the engagement and retention? And if it is improvement, then you say this product or feature works and we should double down on it. Versus going with just strong hypothesis, right? It's purely, even the product development has become now just the data-driven decision making. And some of the organization almost create engine out of it. It is like product development itself is nothing but you come up with hypothesis, continue to feed that into your A/B experiment engine. Whatever works, you keep adding more hypothesis and continue to build on that. Whatever doesn't work out, you throw it. So literally product development and featured product innovation to say now is becoming more and more data-driven decision-making engine. Obviously, there is a creativity bit, etc. That continues to play important role, but for large part, it has become data-driven decision-making engine.
Okay. And I believe in the current times as well, how tech is evolving. There is the threats are also evolving, right? And since you have experience in information security, so how do you assess the current state of information security in India?
That's a very interesting question. I've thought about it a lot when I was because I've been in the information security domain for quite some time, and earlier working for US-based organizations and now B2C startups in India. And I was always curious about why there is so much obsession about security in the West versus not so much in India. And I feel we have to go back to our cultural nuances itself. So when I used to sit next to my colleague in the US, in US office, even when I had spent like 6 months sitting next to that person, I would not know anything about that person beyond office.
Okay.
Like whether that person is married, where does he or she live, what's going on in his or her family. Even if when she received a call or he received a call, typically they would go to some other place to take up the call and things like that. So there is that inherent boundary on what to share and what not to share. That's part of the culture itself. Whereas if you see in India, if you're say traveling by train or bus or anywhere else, uh, anybody will feel very comfortable asking what may be perceived as extremely private questions like, are you married, do we have children, where do you live, what do your parents do, and you can go to extent of asking your salary also, right?
Yeah.
So but that's our culture. And the problem with that is, while that's harmless and maybe it does form intimate relationship during those journeys, at the digital products or on internet, those can be extremely dangerous, because somebody having that kind of access, it can be used misused in so many different ways. And that's why in India it is even more critical.
Okay.
Information security is more critical because our end users are not necessarily as aware or as conscious about what is sensitive information.
Yeah.
Maybe bank password is what they may consider as a sensitive information, but anything else they may think, like, what's a big deal if I'm sharing whether I'm married or not? But all of this data can be used in so many different ways. But good part, I think, what government is, I think that's why in countries like ours, government role has to play bigger role, and they're already doing.
Okay.
Even though I think, even though lack of cybersecurity awareness is very poor in India, if you see, and even though we have done amazing and job of digitization of payments, if you see, number of frauds are way lesser in India compared to any other developed countries. That's because stringent policies are in place.
Okay.
And same, I think, is going to happen with now DPDP policy that government is going to enforce very soon.
What is that policy?
It's about data protection, and it's very similar to GDPR compliance that Europe has. And some of the, I think we have done even better job of those policies, and those are going to also enforce quite severe fines on organizations who don't fulfill. So that will enforce all the organizations to take information security way more seriously than it is taken today.
Okay. And what is the GDPR compliance?
That is a security or data protection regulation that European Union has.
Okay. Great. Okay. So, Umesh, I was going through some stats, and according to a survey, currently in India, and this is post-COVID, okay, 71% of the Indian employees keep work flexibility as a crucial parameter for them.
Yeah.
And work flexibility can include work from home or flexible working hours, flexibility to take breaks also, right? And around 70% of the Indian job seekers, they are preferring hybrid and remote work environments.
Yeah.
So since we are seeing a rapid adoption of these flexible work environments, so what is going to be the future of the work environments now?
It's a very interesting question, right? And everybody has opinions, and everybody has strong opinions.
Yes.
On this topic. I'll add my view. I think, as you mentioned, right, there are pulls and pushes. If you take just purely employee point of view, most of them, would they prefer flexibility, having flexibility? Absolutely, yes, most. And I'm surprised only 70% want flexibility and other 30, why they don't want flexibility. But I think even I would like, or you would like, or anybody, any employee would want that flexibility. But where do we draw that boundary? Is the important part. Like, flexibility is your ability to take break when you want. I think that those are absolutely fine. I think more, and there has not been too much disagreement. The biggest point of contention has been working from office or working remotely, especially 100% remote work, right? I think that's where the biggest contention happens. And hybrid work has become more like a middle ground, where organizations still are able to convince employees and also attract good talent. Personally, I'm not big fan of 100% remote work, especially in the product and tech, right?
Okay.
There are areas like operational jobs, right? You have very clear metric. You have to do, like, if you are a BPO, number of minutes of calls that you need to make, number of customers you need to talk, and there are systems in place to do everything. If you're handling customer issues, etc., it hardly matters whether you're doing in office or you're doing home, because your interactions with the rest of the organization and colleague is very limited. Most of your interaction is with end users. So ops kind of work, I think it works very well, even complete remote. But product and tech development, there is so much collaboration that needs to happen. And while if you already have that chemistry built in organization, if they're working remotely for some time, it works well. But if you have never worked closely with each other, and you build a remote setup, I think at some point it'll take toll on the pace, agility, even learning of individuals. And I find it, like, if I can give unsolicited advice, at least at the junior level, where there is most of them want to work fully remote. They have gone to their native places and things like that, and they want to stay there.
Yes.
I feel it can be limiting for long-term growth if you don't build those awareness around what else is happening, right, in organization. If you're an engineer, you talking to a product manager for some time, you'll know how they're thinking about product. Or you talk to a data analyst, you would understand how they're analyzing the data. Or you talk to an infosec person, you get insight of information security. But that may not happen in remote setup. You schedule most of those meetings as only on need basis, and that limits your exposure, because a lot of learning happens outside those structured meetings. And that's where I feel long term fully remote work may not be a great idea, at least for product and tech, uh, or anywhere there is innovation and a lot of collaboration needed.
Okay.
I'm all for, I think, hybrid kind of startup that works, that can give best of both worlds, which is you have those 2 days where you're focusing a lot on these discussions, etc. You have also build FaceTime, rapport, and then there is some time where you can have highly focused time. You're working from home and executing things.
And what role can technology play here in these work environments?
I think that has already, like, productivity suites have already become very popular, like Zooms of the world. If you see number of innovations they are bringing in. If you are taking a call on Zoom, it automatically, I think both Meet and Zoom have that, which is it automatically starts taking meeting notes also.
Yeah.
That if you're having physical meeting, that may not be possible. So in some regards, technology can make some of these remote things even better than better than in the physical world. Yeah, I think that there is a lot of exciting opportunities in that space.
And Umesh, over the last decade, how has the technology ecosystem evolved in India?
Oh, that's a very interesting topic, right? I keep discussing with lot of my colleagues. Uh, Not just last 10 years. If you take slightly increase the horizon, uh, India's growth in technology has been very, very interesting. We started mostly as a offshore, cost-effective development centers or services, what we call, with Infosys and TCS of the world. They did to the large part, right? What that created is huge talent pool of people who know how to code, how to build software for US based or software for developed countries. Then we moved to having center of excellence here, which is large MNCs setting up their offices here. Akamai was one good example, but you will see literally most of the top tech companies opening their offices in India. That I think was the next step. I think from there we evolved into building digital products for ourselves. Then we started building Flipkarts of the world or Swiggies of the world, building great consumer products out of India for India. Uh, and now I think the next wave is that's happening, which is we are building products for out of India for the world. That's already happening to large extent in SaaS space, B2B SaaS space. Freshworks, Zohos are truly global B2B products built out of India. Only area that we are not yet done like great job of, and I think that's where Pocket FM will start may start that. But it's bound to happen, which is building great consumer products, global consumer products out of India. And if you see Pocket FM does 70% of 70% of our business comes from the US. But there are more and more consumer internet companies will come out of India, and those will be global products. And once we do that, I think we may be the only country which has got this complete spectrum. I think digitization in government, public goods also, government has done an amazing job that way. Like if you see like payments and all the government public services that are offered through mobile apps in India, I think we are one step ahead of most of the developed countries also.
Yes. I think definitely, like you mentioned, government is also taking those steps. If we just, let's say talk about Digi Yatra, right? It has just made the entire experience so smooth and shorter as well, I would say. Earlier you had to go and then, you need to be in lines but now you can just simply enter the airport, right? And some of the airports have adopted that technology, yet there are a lot of them which are yet to adopt this technology, right? And if you look at the payments, the UPI, right? Now in Paris also I can use it. PhonePe has recently launched it in UAE, right? So we can use it there. So definitely India as a country, we are making a lot of progress, I would say.
And I think we're uniquely placed in having this full spectrum, almost like a massive tech growth in every aspect. I hope we get equally good at building infrastructure. I think that is a part we are great at, but I think we are really good at building digital products.
Yes. And manufacturing is also picking up, for sure. That is another major sector. And especially with these companies coming to India, if you talk about Apple or Tesla, right? So there's a lot of work which is going their side as well. Yes. Okay, so Umesh, we have almost come to the end.
Oh, great.
But what is that advice that you would want to share with the technologists out there who are trying to solve for India?
Oh, interesting question, right? Advice would be a strong word, but I think one suggestion I would surely would like to make is trying to understand our end users. Like most of the products, if you try to copy from other places, they don't work in India as they are.
Yeah.
So understanding our end user persona, um, and that too we have wide spectrum, so understanding that whole spectrum, and then start building product for that, I think that's going to be um, that's going to be crucial. Second, as I was mentioning, I think now Indian entrepreneurs should not just focus on building for India. I think that we have done. I think we have done well, and we'll continue to do well. But I think it's time for us to start building truly global, both SaaS consumer products out of India.
Okay.
Uh, if we do that and we achieve, if we end up doing well in that space, then like that can have disproportionate reward, both for entrepreneurs as well as for the country as a whole.
Country as well. Wow. I think that's an interesting piece of advice and insight as well.
Yeah.
Great. Thank you so much, Umesh. It was
Thank you.
lovely chatting with you.
It has been wonderful.
Great, wonderful.
As we prepare to close the curtain on this season, let's celebrate the moments of inspiration, insight, and growth that we all have shared together. But fear not, for while this may seem the end of one chapter, it marks the beginning of endless adventures to come. So let's embrace the closing of this season with excitement and anticipation of what lies ahead. Stay tuned for more fascinating insights and boundless possibilities in the seasons to come. We thank you for joining us on this incredible journey. I'm your host Ruby, signing off. Until we meet again, keep exploring the past, discussing the present, and preparing for the future.